The forgotten lives of common people in medieval time. They left no diaries, no monuments, no famous names, yet they were the majority. Invisible millions who lived, suffered, and died without ever being remembered. If you were born poor in medieval times, history had already decided your future, your job, your hunger, your suffering, and even the age of your death. Born into survival. Imagine opening your eyes in a world where you will never choose your path. You will not choose your profession. You will not choose where you live. You will not choose whom you serve. And you will almost certainly die before the age of 40. This was not a dystopian fantasy. This was normal life for most people in medieval Europe. When we think of the Middle Ages, we imagine kings, knights, castles, and wars. But those figures represented less than 10% of the population. The real medieval world belonged to peasants, laborers, servants, craftsmen, widows, and children. Ordinary people whose names never entered history books, but whose hands built the world. This is not the story of power. This is the story of survival. Freedom was privilege. In medieval society, freedom was not a right. It was a privilege, and most people were never meant to have it. Medieval society was built on a rigid hierarchy known as feudalism. At the top stood the king beneath him, the nobles and knights, then the clergy. At the very bottom existed the common people. They were known as peasants or serfs. A serf was not a slave, but not truly free. He belonged to the land, and the land belonged to a lord. He could not leave the village without permission. He could not marry without approval. He could not hunt in nearby forests or fish in rivers. Even the trees and soil were not his. From birth, a person's destiny was fixed. If your father was a farmer, you would be a farmer. There was no education system for the poor. Their entire universe was a single village. Life was labor. For medieval peasants, work did not start in the morning. It started at birth and ended only with death. A peasant's day began before sunrise. There were no clocks. The rooster was the alarm. The sun was the schedule. Men worked in the fields. Women worked in the fields. Children worked in the fields, plowing, sowing, harvesting, carrying stones, collecting firewood, feeding animals. In summer, they worked up to 14 hours a day. In winter, they repaired tools and struggled to survive the cold. There were no machines. Everything was done by hand. Work was not optional. It was life itself. This system kept the poor permanently poor. Survival, not shelter. Imagine a home with no privacy, no cleanliness, no comfort, and realizing this is the place you will spend your entire life. A medieval peasant's home was usually a small wooden hut with one room, one fire, one family. Sometimes animals lived inside as well. There was no chimney. Smoke filled the air. The walls were made of mud and straw. The floor was dirt. There were no beds, only piles of straw. There was no privacy, no toilets, no clean water. Rats, insects, and disease were constant companions. At night, families slept together, not for comfort, but for warmth. In winter, people sometimes froze to death inside their own homes. Yet for them, this was normal. They had never seen anything better. Food and hunger. In medieval Europe, hunger was not an emergency. It was a permanent condition. The poor rarely ate. Meat was expensive and reserved for the rich. Their daily diet consisted of bread made from barley or rye, simple vegetables, cheese, onions, and a thick soup called pottage. Even children drank weak beer or wine. Hunger followed them everywhere. During famines, people ate grass, bark rats, even leather shoes. For medieval peasants, hunger was not an event. It was a way of life. Disease and death. The greatest enemy of medieval people was not war. It was their own bodies. There were no doctors as we know them today. Disease was believed to come from bad air, evil spirits, or God's punishment. The most terrifying disaster was the Black Death in the 14th century. It killed nearly 1/3 of Europe's population. People died within days.
Their skin turned black. Parents buried children, and children buried parents. There were no hospitals, no medicine, no understanding. Death was not hidden. It was familiar, expected.
Religion and fear. Religion promised heaven, but first it taught people how to accept hell on earth. Religion controlled every aspect of medieval life. The church was present at birth and death. People believed God watched everything. Hell was real. Heaven was the only escape. The church taught obedience. Knowledge was controlled. Questioning was dangerous. Fear kept people silent. Entertainment and emotions. In a world built on suffering, laughter became a form of resistance. Despite everything, people still found moments of joy. They sang folk songs, danced at festivals, told stories around fire, played simple games. Festivals were rare escapes. Food was shared. Wine flowed. Life felt lighter. These moments kept people human. There, any hope. Hope existed in medieval society, but it was designed for very few. Could a common person escape? Very rarely, some joined the church. Some became soldiers. Some ran away to cities where, after years, they might gain freedom. But for most, life ended where it began. Same village, same work, same poverty, different grave. History forgot them. They never ruled kingdoms, but they carried civilization on their backs, and history never even learned their names.
The medieval world was not built by kings. It was built by hands that history forgot, by women who never had voices, by children who never had childhood. They left no monuments, no statues, no glory. When we study history,
we remember the crowns. But real history lived barefoot in the mud. It is about how easily human lives become invisible when power decides whose story matters.